Hey everybody, welcome to the Crohn's Fitness Food Podcast, dedicated to raising awareness, sharing IBD stories, and offering support for those with Crohn's and colitis. Together, we can share knowledge, experiences, and help show the world the many faces of IBD. Well, hi everyone. Thank you for joining me today for another episode of the Crohn's Fitness Food Podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Gish, Crohn's warrior since 2006 and lifelong fitness fanatic. Before we get into today's interview, I just want to let you know that it's been split into two episodes. Part one is what you'll be hearing today as my guest Sanaa Lynne shares her IBD journey. And in part two, we'll get into the details of the lifestyle and dietary changes that Sanaa made in her journey that has helped her achieve the health she enjoys today. My guest today is Sanaa Lynne, who's battling not just Crohn's, but also gastroparesis and fibromyalgia. She's here to share her journey with IBD, how she's turned her life around and went from bedridden to businesswoman, and how she's helping women love their guts and kick IBD's butt. Thanks so much for joining me today, Sanaa, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you and to hear your story. I started kind of peeking around on your blog. I've been following you on Instagram, so I'm excited for what you have to share with us today. So let's go ahead and let's jump right in. And can you start by sharing your Crohn's story and talk about how you were diagnosed?
Okay, yeah. So my story kind of starts at birth. When I was born, my mother she wasn't able to breastfeed me, so I was bottle fed. And from the time that I was born, basically, whenever my mom would feed me the bottle, after she would burp me, 75% of the bottle I would throw up. I wasn't able to keep it down. And she had me tested by a bunch of different doctors, but they weren't able to find anything. And considering this was 1991, the health advances weren't what they are today. Mm-hmm. So they were like, no, she's fine. Just keep an eye on her and just feed her more often. So it kind of started from there. Like, I definitely think I was born with some sort of gut sensitivity. And but during my early childhood, I was pretty healthy. Like, I was able to eat and live like a normal child. We didn't know there was anything wrong. But in 2001, I was 10 years old and I fell and broke my leg, which then caused me to develop like TMJ issues where my jaw was unaligned with my skull. So like that just caused a lot of like chronic pain in my face, which led to migraines. And I started having like menstrual cramping really early on. Like, I was only 10 years old and I wouldn't have gotten my period for another 4 years. I didn't get it until I was 14. So the doctors diagnosed me with endometriosis because, to the extent of my pain, they were like, okay, you definitely have some female issues going on. Now looking back on it, I know I don't have endometriosis, but I think what it was my Crohn's manifesting itself in my the lower part of my digestive tract, and I was mistaking it for like menstrual cramps. And so my doctor just gave me Excedrin, migraine, and Motrin 800, and she didn't really she just said take every 4 to 6 hours as needed. There wasn't hey, be careful, like these are really strong chemicals that are, it could possibly mess up your gut if you take too long. There was no advice like that. It was, here, take this medication because you're in pain. And so I was popping Excedrin, migraine, and Motrin 800 literally every 4 to 6 hours on a consistent basis for almost a year. I was just like taking them like candy because I was in a lot of pain. I wasn't able to eat. I wasn't able to like talk that much. My leg was hurting. And so it was just a lot. And so looking back on it now, I know that all of those medications were really hard on my already sensitive gut.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward a little bit, when I turned 16 years old, so it was about 2007, I started having like extreme abdominal pain, which ended up leading to me having my gallbladder removed. And I was actually the youngest patient that my doctor had ever done surgery on. And she actually asked me to donate my gallbladder to science because I had a dozen quarter-size stones in my gallbladder.
Oh,
And your
wow.
gallbladder is really small. So that was like extreme. And she was really, really surprised by that. So they asked if I would donate to science. So I was like, okay, that kind of made me
Did you
feel
donate your
cool. I
gallbladder?
did. I kind of felt cool because I was like, oh, science needs me. But I didn't really realize like what that meant for my poor body, like it was
Yeah,
going
the
through a
early
lot.
signs.
Yeah, definitely. So once I had my gallbladder removed, everything kind of went downhill from there because no one really explained to me about diet. Like both my parents had their gallbladders removed as well, but they just said, so I think the doctor assumed that I didn't need like to be
Mm-hmm.
educated on it because my parents had, but really all they told me was, oh, you're just going to have to watch out when you eat greasy foods.
Hmm.
So I didn't really have like this whole new dietary plan to follow after having lost an organ, which now I know has definitely affected me. And so when I was 18, so in 2009, that's when like the Crohn symptoms really started flaring heavy, and I was very, very sick. I was constantly yo-yoing in my weight. And I mean, and by yo-yo, I mean, I would gain 50 pounds and then lose 50 pounds and then gain. So it was like back and
Big
forth.
swings.
Yeah, because I was having a lot of flares. And during the time that I was flaring, I couldn't eat. And then when I wasn't flaring, I was like stuffing my face. And I wasn't eating healthy
Mm-hmm.
either. I was eating like pizza and McDonald's. And so I definitely was like contributing to it, but I just didn't understand what was happening. And so I started to see a gastroenterologist, and we did every test imaginable. I mean, I had multiple colonoscopies, endoscopies. He did a capsuleoscopy, which is basically where you swallow a pill and inside the pill has a camera, and they were taking 50,000 photos. It took a total of 50,000 photos as it went through my entire digestive tract. So he was trying to see like if there was anything that he missed in the scopes because my symptoms were so severe, but he wasn't able to find anything when he actually went like inside. So he ended up diagnosing me with celiac, but it came out that I didn't have celiac disease. And then he diagnosed me with Mediterranean Familial Fever. I don't even
Wow, what is
understand what
that?
that is to this day. I guess the way he explained it was the people from the Mediterranean have a certain protein in their blood, and sometimes that just reacts with the body. I don't even,
Hmm.
I really don't understand it because I didn't understand it then. And he just like put
Mm-hmm.
me on this medication for it. And it didn't work. And he tested me again and there wasn't anything there. So he was like, okay, you don't have that. I don't know what you have. There isn't much I can do for you. We can just chalk it up to IBS. And I was really upset with that because I was like, at that time, especially, I was like, I don't have irritable bowel syndrome. Like I have something more severe because I had done the Google search on IBS and it was really just like, oh, your stomach hurts a little bit and you go between like constipation and diarrhea. For me, I was vomiting. I was losing weight. I was missing days of school. Like I wasn't able to get out of bed. So I was really unhappy with that. And I felt like it was just like a cop out for him because he couldn't figure it out. So then I started seeing every single specialist I could. Like anyone who would see me, I went to them. I went to a
Wow.
neurologist. I went to an oncologist. I went to a rheumatologist. I mean, I was going to everyone. And luckily, like I had really great insurance, so I could do that. But all the
Mm-hmm.
tests were coming back like healthy. And it got to a point where the doctors were telling me and my mom that it was all in my head and, I'm making it up. I just want attention. There's nothing wrong with me. And that was really hard because, I already had a little bit of a flair for exaggerating when I would tell a story, because I'd be like, oh, I wanted, growing up especially, like I wanted it to be more exciting, but I wasn't exaggerating about my pain. And so I was really scared that my mom was going to believe the doctors when they said that, because she already was like, oh, well, Senna exaggerates. So that was more so growing up. I'm not like that as much now, but that was just definitely a concern. And it made me feel really alone and really invisible, because they were just saying basically that that I was making it up. And that was such a hard pill to swallow. And then what made it even worse was throughout my journey with Crohn's, like there were so many times and still today, where I literally will ask myself, am I making it up? Like when someone tells you
Mm-hmm.
that you're lying for so long, you're like, wait, am I? Because there was a really long period of time where I was not healthy enough to be healthy, but I wasn't sick enough to be sick, so I
Mm-hmm.
was like in this weird limbo. And so I just felt really unheard and alone. And so I eventually, and because I was having such, like my flares were so random, and sometimes they would last for months, sometimes it would be a week, sometimes like I went a year without any major symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
so it was weird for me.
And, I think a lot of people will relate to that because there's so many people that I've met and spoken to over the years that it took a long time for them to get a diagnosis. And during that time, I've noticed a lot of us with IBD, we are very just kind of go get it done kind of people. And so you'll end up kind of carrying on and you'll go through life. And so you go through the motions. And so that I think feeds into the idea that other people think, oh, well, you must be fine because you're doing all of your daily activities and you're going through life. And
Yeah,
which is
absolutely.
really, really terrible. Just like you're talking about how then we start to second guess ourselves and we start thinking, am I making this up? What is this? Because I know I've felt like that at times, and I've spoken to so many people that have that same feeling. So it's unfortunate, but I think a lot of people will really connect with that and understand that part of your story. So keep going. Tell me a little bit more about how long did that go on, and then kind of take me through the next, keep going with your story.
Yeah. So that went on. I went undiagnosed for 10 years with
Wow.
symptoms and flares and stuff. And eventually, like I said, I think I was searching really hard for the first 5 years. I was going to, like I said, like any doctor that would see me. And I live in Michigan, so fortunately, like I have U of M Ann Arbor, which is a really great medical like university or medical clinic and hospital and stuff. So I had really great doctors, but they just at that time, I think what was happening was all of my testing was not being done during a flare, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's why I went undiagnosed for so long. Um, but so yeah, so then that went on for about 10 years. And like during that period of time, I was eating really terribly. I was drinking Coke all the time. I was definitely adding to my already existing problem, but I didn't see it that way. I was just like, for me, I knew that I was going to be in pain after I ate, regardless of what I was eating. So I
Mm-hmm.
was like, if I'm going to hurt, let me and actually enjoy what I'm eating anyway, which
Yeah.
now I realize like that was not the best choice. But at that time, I was just like, whatever, like I'm going to do it. And I had like this whole system. Like I would eat something really unhealthy that I knew would really affect me. And then I knew like I had 20 minutes to get to the bathroom. And if I didn't, then,
Mm-hmm.
it would not be that much fun. But so I like created this plan for myself to just survive, I guess. And then in 2016, I had a really, really stressful year. And I feel like it was an accumulation of things, but a lot of it had to do with stress. I was smoking the hookah like very regularly, unfortunately. I was drinking a lot of pop. I myself, like as a whole, was very unhealthy. I was doing a lot of all-nighters because I was in college and I just
Mm-hmm.
wasn't taking care of myself. And so then in the summer of 2016, I remember I had gained 100 pounds in 4 months. It just like packed on really fast. And I didn't even notice it because I mean, I was gaining weight every day. And so it was happening so quickly. I didn't notice it until I looked in the mirror and I was like, 70 pounds
Mm-hmm.
overweight, or like over what I was. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I remember we went to Turkey to visit some family. And when the whole entire time my sister and I were there, I literally could not eat one thing. There was nothing that I could eat. I was drinking water all day, but I couldn't actually stomach any food. And we were there for 2 weeks. And I remember my aunt looking at me at dinner and she was like, I don't understand. Like, how are you so big, but you're not eating? Like, I haven't seen you eating at all. And she wasn't saying that to hurt my
Mm-hmm.
feelings. She was saying that as like, she was worried about my health because she's like, this
Yeah.
isn't normal from how your eating habits are. You should have lost weight. And we were walking so much. She's like, you should have been
Mm-hmm.
losing weight. She goes, but it actually, I see that you're gaining. And even though it was really hard to hear, that was such an important moment in my life because I felt seen. I felt like for the first time, especially someone in my family was looking at me and was like, whoa, something is not okay. Like, you need
Yeah.
to find out right away. And unfortunately, she was right. When I came home, I I think I had 1 month of like normal life. And then that was it. I was extremely, extremely ill. And it was the worst flare of my life. It ended up lasting for 2 years. And
Mm.
it was really, really difficult for me. I literally, when I think of it, imagine like a water balloon, right? And you put the water balloon
Mm-hmm.
under like the faucet and you turn the water on and it's just getting like bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's fine, like it's holding
Mm-hmm.
on. But then all of a sudden there's too much water and it pops. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I felt like happened to me. I was vomiting literally on the hour, every single hour. And it wasn't even food. It was just like bile and stomach acid. And I was throwing up like so much that I had a huge cleaning bucket next to me and my mom was cleaning that like multiple times a day because I was filling it up and I couldn't stop. I literally lived in the bathroom. Like, I was so fortunate that my room, I had like a bathroom connected to my room because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have enough energy to walk. So I would like fall out of bed and then like scoot myself into the bathroom because I
Wow.
was just so sick and I couldn't keep anything down. It was really, really hard. I was in the hospital for almost a month. I remember I went in the beginning of December and I didn't get out until Christmas Eve. And I was lying in the hospital and they had me on everything. And this hospital trip was the trip where I got diagnosed. So
Wow.
in the hospital, they ended up finding out that I had gastroparesis, which I don't know if you know what that is, but gastroparesis is basically where your stomach doesn't contract. And so when you're eating, there's no movement in the stomach itself. So everything is just like sitting there. And which now I understand why I was throwing up bile so much was
Mm-hmm.
because I had all of this like fermented food that wasn't being digested and it was just turning into like stomach acid and then it basically like overflowed and my whole body was just so consumed with acid that there was nothing else I could do but just expel it. And so they found that by I had to eat this egg that like inside had like I don't know. I want to say it was radioactive, but that sounds so intense. But it was just like something that they can see in the camera.
I think
And
I've seen pictures of someone else had posted something on Instagram, like the X-ray of being diagnosed with gastroparesis, and I think it had like tiny little shapes or something the person had swallowed, and then they could kind of see that through the X-ray to
yeah,
see how far it traveled down. Is that kind of
yeah.
like what was in the capsule?
Yeah, so it's they take like an egg, like they hard boil an egg for you,
Hmm.
and then they inject the egg with that like fluid or whatever it is that like shows up on the X-ray,
Wow.
and then you eat the egg, and for 4 hours you lay underneath this like camera. And
Wow.
I had to do that 4 times because the first time there was absolutely no movement. Like where the
Wow.
egg dropped after the 4 hours was where the egg was. And so they were like, oh, yeah, 100% you have gastroparesis. So then a few days later, they're like, let's check again and see like what the rate of your, like of your like digestive system is. And I remember it ended up being, it took like 4 days for me to digest
Hmm.
that one egg. And so that hospital ended up referring me to the Cleveland Clinic, which is like a renowned medical
Hmm.
facility. And they were like, you need to go see someone down there because this is pretty intense. And so I was like, okay. And they didn't have the right means to help me. So we made an appointment to end up going down. But see, I'm in Michigan, so Cleveland Clinic is in Ohio. So it was like a 4 hour drive. But we ended up making the appointment, and but that was later on down the road. So I got diagnosed with gastroparesis, and then I remember my GI, the same one that I've had for the past 10 years, comes in and he's like, okay, so you definitely have gastroparesis, but what I'm not understanding is gastroparesis is a secondary disease, and I'm
Hmm.
not finding your primary. I think you might have Crohn's. Let's check you. And if I would have had the energy, I probably would have yelled at him because I had been telling him this for 10 years. I had already been able to diagnose myself based on my symptoms and what I've been reading online.
That's what I
And
was going to ask. Had you been researching online what some of these symptoms were, and how come he didn't think of Crohn's before?
well, in the beginning, what he told me was I check off all of the checks for Crohn's, but I didn't have any physical sign of it. So like my intestines were clean. There wasn't anything. And so he was like, I can't diagnose you with Crohn's when you don't have anything in your intestines. And
Hmm.
so I appreciate that because he was being more reserved, because now I understand that the Crohn's
Yeah.
medication is like insane. So I
Yeah.
appreciate him being reserved. But at that time, I didn't appreciate that because I was like, well, if you would have told me this 10 years ago, maybe I wouldn't have developed gastroparesis.
Hmm.
But now I understand, like, I think it was just all one of the same kind of, and maybe they play off of each other, but to me, it's just all one issue, right? I think it just
Yeah.
boils down to gut health.
Yeah.
And so then he checked and everything, and then they're like, okay, you have Crohn's. So in that visit, the first time any like hospital visit had ever done anything for me, I got two diagnoses or
And that
diagnoses.
was in 2018, if I'm following the timeline. Is that correct?
16.
2016 is when you
Yeah.
got all the diagnosis.
Yeah. And then I ended up, so when I was in that hospital, I remember I was there on like leading into Christmas, and I had just received my Crohn's diagnosis, which was really hard for me because even though the doctor had given me exactly what I wanted to hear, like I wanted a diagnosis because in my mind it was, if we can find out what's wrong, we can treat it and then I can be normal again. But
Hmm.
what I heard was, you have an incurable disease that we will just treat. You pretty much, what I was hearing was, I'll never be normal again, which was really, really difficult for me. And then being there for Christmas, and the nurses who were so sweet, I love all of them, but they were bringing me gifts like for Christmas and
Oh.
the cards and all of this stuff. And I got like a gift from the hospital and different people on the floor, which was very comforting to know that there was, people who supported me. But at the same time, it was really disheartening because it was solidifying the fact that I was really sick. And so I told my mom, I'm done. I want to be out of the hospital. I will not be here like tomorrow. I can't handle it. Please, please like discharge me. And at this time I had already been using cannabis irregularly to treat my symptoms. I had talked about it with my parents, but it wasn't something that we had actually like fully discussed. Like I had just kind of mentioned it in passing, and my parents are very, strict religious Muslim parents. So at first, like it took time where I had to play the idea of, it's not a drug, it's a plant. And I'm using it for medicinal purposes. And so I told my mom, I was like, Mama, please, my friend lives 2 blocks away from the hospital. And if you take me there, like I can get some cannabis and I know I will feel better. Like I need to get out of this hospital. I can't stop like throwing up or anything. And so she was like, let me ask your dad. So she calls and asks my dad, and my dad was like, I don't care what she wants, like anything she wants, anything she needs. If she thinks it's going to make her feel better, then take her. So my mom's like, okay.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I'm really
What
fortunate.
supportive parents. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
I'm really, really fortunate because they're extremely supportive and they have been here for me every step of the way. And so then, my mom, I got discharged, and like when you leave the hospital, they wheelchair you out anyway, but I couldn't get out of the wheelchair. Like my mom and grandpa had to like half carry me to put me into the car. And then to get into my friend's house, I literally I had my arm around my mom's neck, and she was like holding me up, and I'm like limping to get into my friend's house. And so, okay, I just want to preface this. I do not condone smoking of any sort, like not tobacco, not weed, not anything. Like smoking in itself is really terrible for the lungs. But at this point of my life, I hadn't gotten there yet. I wasn't fully educated on cannabis. I just knew it enough that it was helping me. And so I was smoking it at that time.
There's a lot of information out there of little anecdotes here and there that people bring it up. Like, does cannabis help with Crohn's? Can it help with, IBD? So there's just a little bit, probably like what you're saying, there's just enough to be intriguing. Like, what is this? Does it help? And can it help? So please continue with what you were saying.
Yeah. So when I got into my friend's house and they saw me, they were like, oh my God, sit down and take a dab, which is like basically like really concentrated. It's just a really hard hit, I guess. And they're like, here, take a dab. And I did. And okay. So a dab is basically like a lot of, it's closer to like a hookah, right? You're hitting it from, something that either has water or whatever, like it's going through like a pipe. So you're getting a lot more air into your lungs, which for, when you're using cannabis, that means you're getting more medicine. So I took like a really big dab, and immediately I started feeling better. Like the nausea was lessening. My stomach was like, the cramps were lessening. Like I felt immediate relief. And then they gave me like some edibles and some bud. And after 25 minutes, I was able to walk out of their house by myself, like without my mom helping me. And I was able to get into the car. And when my mom saw that, she told my dad, and she was like, she's like, Omar, I'm telling you, I have never seen anything more crazy in my life. She's like, she could not walk into that building, and then she walked out fine. And she was like, I believe her. Not that they didn't, but they had never experienced it, And so my dad was like, okay, good. Like, I'm glad it's helping. So
was that something that you then continued? And maybe you were about to go here with your story, but was that something that you decided to continue, or it sounds like maybe you didn't continue with that?
No, I absolutely did. So what started happening was, I realized at that point as well, because that was a big indicator for me too, because I had never been that drastic. And so for me, seeing that, how sick I was and how I was feeling before the cannabis, and then how immediately I was starting to feel better afterwards, I was like, I really reevaluated the medications that I was taking. And all of the medicine that the doctors were giving me, nothing gave me this kind of relief,
What
except
did
for
they
the
have you on at
morphine.
that point?
When I was in the hospital, after I got my diagnosis, they put me on Humira, because I couldn't take anything orally. Everything had to be either like intravenously or like as a shot. So, and then they had me on like morphine and Zofran and Dialopin or something. I don't know. There was I don't really know. There was so
Mhm.
many different medications. Like I was there for so long that we were trying so many different things, but nothing was helping. And I just think that I have a very sensitive gut. I think really I'm just super sensitive to chemicals and medications and stuff. And when I was using the cannabis, it was the only thing that was giving me relief. But the thing that was hard was because I was smoking it, I was only having relief for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And then
Wow.
it
So
was
it didn't
gone.
last. It only lasted that
Yeah.
brief of a period?
Yeah. It didn't really last because when you smoke it, you're basically like you're taking the plant that spent its whole life growing like these nutrients and everything. And then you're like combusting it with this extreme heat and it's just turning into ash. So really the medicinal value of smoking cannabis is like 10 to 20%.
Mm.
Whereas if you were to ingest it or to eat it or cook with it or something, then you're getting 100% of the benefit of that plant. So when I started doing more research about it and I started learning that smoking, smoking the plant itself is not doing you any favors. It's just like a very, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Brief relief. So I started cooking with it and turning it into oils and making it into like hash and changing it into different ways that I could consume it. And even though it does take longer to
Mhm.
feel, it takes for me up to 2 hours, especially like if I'm consuming it, um, just to start to feel relief. But it's a way more powerful form of relief when you take it orally versus when you smoke it. Also, when you take it orally, at least for me, there aren't as many psychoactive effects. Like for me, it's
Mhm.
all in my body. Like my nerves feel relaxed. My nerves aren't firing. My muscles feel relaxed. My brain fog is like lifting. So those are like the symptoms that are being relieved when I'm taking it like internally instead of it being more of like a head high, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, but so that's how I started with using something natural. And after
Mhm.
I realized like how powerful the cannabis was, um, I slowly, very slowly started moving into other herbs and other spices. And at this time, my now husband, then best friend, and I were really talking about how like we were really going into the depths of what exactly Crohn's is and
Mhm.
how it affects the body, how foods affect the gut. And he's a biologist who specialized in botany. So he's very like,
Wow.
yeah, he really knows his plants and he really knows like the human anatomy. And so
What a great resource to have right
it
at your side.
yes, it was so nice. And we really, I mean, obviously like we're married now, so that tells
Mhm.
you how good it was. But he really, really helped me so much because he was educating me on a deeper level than what I was getting on Google. Like I was able to absorb the information, but I wasn't sure how to apply it, and so
Mhm.
he was really taking all of like the scientific jargon and turning it into digestible pieces for me to actually take and apply into my everyday life. And so, um, okay, so at this point in my life, there was a whirlwind of change. As soon as
Mhm.
I accepted that, okay, modern or like Western medicine has failed me, and
Mm-hmm.
there are other avenues that I can explore. And so at the same time as I'm starting to look into other plants and, herbs and spices and stuff, I'm also starting to really reflect on my psyche, myself, my personality, my beliefs, my
Mm-hmm.
motives, my goals. Like I'm really starting to break everything down, because after that hospital visit in December, I spent almost a year just kind of like healing in bed. I really wasn't able to do much. I wasn't getting out of the house. I wasn't doing more than, you know, sitting in bed to sometimes going downstairs and watching TV downstairs on the couch. But like that was my trip. I was really just, my body just gave up. It was like, we've had enough. We need to just rest and we're not going to move. And so I had to spend a lot of time reflecting on my behaviors and my actions and choices. And this was really hard, but eventually I got to the point where I realized a lot of my pain and a lot of my illness was due by my own hand.
Mm-hmm.
And when I realized that I had to take responsibility for my life and for where I was at, and not just blame it on the universe or blame it on, everyone else or the doctors, it's their fault, they didn't catch it in time. I had to really stop and blame it on myself and be like, look, like I'm not going to put 100% of the blame on me, because obviously I was born with something, but
Mm-hmm.
I know 100% that I negatively contributed to my health. And so I had to like really take a hard look.
Bad, especially with kind of the bad diet that you talked about
Yeah.
earlier on, and kind of that, just the mental aspect of kind of how you looked at the disease.
Yeah. Everything in my life at that point was negative. And I hate to say that, because
Mhm.
I tried to maintain a positive outlook, but when I look back on it, it wasn't, everything, the thoughts that I was thinking, the feelings I had about myself and my world, um, my own, just everything, the way I felt in my body, the way I felt with, like circumstances that were happening, everything was being viewed like these very dirty, dark, dingy glasses. And
Mhm.
I needed to take those off and like have a real reality check and accept the fact that, okay, I made a mistake. I made a lot of really, really big mistakes that led to, at that point, was the most, like the worst thing that could have ever happened to me. And now what? And I think what was more so scary for me was I hadn't loved myself enough to that point for my own like mind and soul to accept the gravity of me being wrong, if that makes sense. It was like my my internal self, like my inner child, was so wounded that it couldn't stand the idea of being upset with itself, because it was already in a bad place. I don't know if that makes any sense, but so I really had to like mend my inner child and heal all of the trauma that happened to me that I was kind of like bottling up inside. And like I said, because I was just in bed doing nothing, I didn't really have anything else to do. And so I
Mhm.
really dug deep into myself, like my personality. And during this time, I also started realizing that there had to be more to life than just waking up, eating, going to work, coming home, paying taxes, going to bed. Like there
Mhm.
there just had to have been more than that. And so I started really trying to search, and I remember wanting to search in like the self-help aisles of like the bookstores and stuff, but there was something that I couldn't grasp getting a self-help book because I would always read the life of the author. And the life of the author was never what I
Mm-hmm.
aspired to be. So I was like, I'm not going to listen to you. Like, I don't like where your life went, you know? And so then I
Mm-hmm.
finally realized that my only answer was through God. You know, if I'm looking for answers, I have to search within and, you know, look to our creator. And so I really started strengthening my relationship with him. And as a Muslim, we have 5 obligatory prayers that you do every day. And so I really made sure that I was making those prayers and I was doing them on time and I was doing them with the right intention and I was fully present, which really helped me train my mind to meditate because in the prayers you have very specific they're like verses that you say, um, and then you have like specific motions that you follow. So I was able to really like focus my mind onto one task and to one train of thought and repeatedly 5 times a day, which each prayer lasts about 5 minutes. So that's 25 minutes a day of just centering yourself. And that really helped a lot. That really brought peace to my soul, like peace to my mind, peace to myself emotionally. I started becoming confident in my own self and I started accepting that, okay, this is the hand that I was dealt, but it doesn't mean that I have to fold. You know, like I can still play. And so I really just started strengthening every single thing in my life. Like, you want to talk about a detox. Like, I detoxed the heck out of my life. I detoxed my food. I detoxed my like bath and body products. I detoxed my friends. I detoxed my thoughts. You know, like there was nothing in my life that was not going unturned. You know, I wanted to make sure that what's in my life now is very intentional and very focused and centered on who I want to become. And that really was the beginning of my healing. And I decided then that I was going to um, go on a completely anti-inflammatory diet, which
Mm-hmm.
having gastroparesis, I could only eat like one meal a day anyway. So for the
Before
first,
you jump
oh,
Before you jump
sorry.
in to talk about food, I do want to kind of chime in and point out how underrated I think that kind of finding that inner peace and getting your mindset different so that you can look at life through different lenses. I think it's so underrated and it's something that, I've kind of recently gone through myself of just with gratitude and learning to meditate. And I've heard it from many other people too who do bring those practices into their lives. Just what a difference to our overall health that having that inner peace, having that calmness, being able to look at things through a different lens, how that really can catapult so many other things in our lives to really get us on track for better health. So I really want to kind of emphasize what you did there and how that you mentioned was really the beginning of what was about to come for this big change for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely believe that the mindset change or the mindset shift that I went through was 100% necessary in order to get to where I am today. Because if I hadn't have changed the way I perceived myself and perceived my situation, I wouldn't have been able to assess what needs fixing and what needs strengthening or whatever. And so I
Mm-hmm.
definitely agree with you there because I have tried to diet my whole entire life and nothing ever stuck. Like I was always like, oh, I can't do diets. I'm just not that girl who can diet. Like whatever, I'll be fat for life. But when I changed my mindset and started viewing food as medicine and information for my body, I was no longer willing to, you know, just eat that cheesy bread and who cares if I'm going to be in pain afterwards, because now I'm thinking if I eat this bread and cheese, there's absolutely zero nutrients that my body is going to take from it. And then I'm probably going to be hungry again in 20 minutes, but my likelihood of being able to actually eat is very slim.
Mhm.
So I basically just wasted my one chance to eat,
Yeah.
And so it's definitely a mindset shift before anything else. And I really believe that I went through what I went through at such, it was extreme for me, but it's not extreme for other people. Like I've heard other stories that are like way worse, but I really believe that I went through the changes and the experiences that I went through to help other women get through that too. Like I've
Mhm.
always known that I had a greater purpose. I never knew what, but when I was a kid, whenever my stomach hurt, which actually now that I think about it, it was actually every night,
All
but
the time.
yeah, whenever my
Mhm.
stomach would hurt, I would literally be like, I am Virgin Mary and my stomach hurting is my baby Jesus. And
Aw.
I don't even know why I thought that, but I was just so convinced that I was going to be somebody. And
Yeah.
what I realize now is that all that was it was a really strong need to help people. That's
Mhm.
what both Mary and Jesus did. Like their whole lives were devoted to helping other people and making their lives better. So I was like, okay, like that's what that's what I have to do. I have to help other women who are in that place where they just really feel stuck, but they're ready to make changes. I want to
Mhm.
be there to help them because I didn't know how, and having my husband as the helping hand really, really helped me get through a lot of phases a lot faster than I would have if I would have been alone.
Yeah. And you have definitely turned this into something good. And we're going to talk about that because I really do want to get into what you're doing now. But let's go ahead and circle back to how that mind shift helped you look at food differently. And I think you were just about to start talking about food and the path you went down when I kind of jumped in there. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
drilled
that's
you.
okay. So basically, when I decided that I'm taking my health into my own hands and basically like playing my own doctor, I was like, first things first is gut health, right? So I was like, in order to truly heal the gut, I have to eliminate everything that I've been introducing to it and just start from scratch. And my mother-in-law had to go through what's called an elimination diet. After her pregnancy, her youngest son had a lot of allergies when he was born, and so because she was breastfeeding, she also had to do like this elimination diet for him. So she really like helped walk me through it. And basically, what I did was like I said, I was only able to eat one meal a day. So I made what I call potato breakfast, but I really need a better name for it. It's more like a potato medley. But I would boil potatoes and then saute onion, garlic, zucchini, potatoes, tomatoes, sometimes mushroom, and sometimes bell pepper. And I would just saute all of those together and with salt, pepper, basil, oregano, um, cayenne pepper.
Mhm.
And that was my meal. And I would just eat that every single day for 6 months. And
Mhm.
I know it sounds really boring to eat the same thing every day, but I absolutely love this dish. And then I put lemon juice on top. But why I love it so much is because I have a lot of acid like in my stomach. I'm extremely acidic. And so potatoes are a really alkaline food and they absorb all the excess acid that's in my stomach. So when I eat like a potato, I feel way better than, like when before, if I don't, like if I eat something
Mhm.
else, right? Or if I were to eat a green, the greens sometimes hurt me more than like this plain potato does. So my idea of like making my meal was I picked all of the foods that I knew I wasn't having troubles eating. So
Mhm.
for me it was really just zucchini, potato, tomato, and sometimes mushrooms. And then
Mhm.
as like the months went on, I would add another vegetable and I would see how that vegetable went. Like I can do red and yellow bell peppers. and orange bell peppers, but I can't do green for some reason. The green bell peppers
So
really bothered
interesting.
me. Yeah, it was really interesting. So as I was like only eating vegetables, every week I would slowly introduce a different food group. So I also
And
learned, I'm sorry.
did you avoid meat because it didn't sit well with you, or had you always kind of avoided meat and eaten a plant-based diet, or was it just something that you didn't tolerate well?
No, at this point, I I purposely left out meat because I knew that it was harder on the digestive system. I
Mhm,
only wanted vegetables because I
mhm,
really wanted to I wanted a reset, And so with meat, there's just so much that goes into meat. Like you have hormones and all these other things. I didn't want to add that yet. Like it is something that I
mhm,
eventually introduced. And
mhm,
I have found that I actually have no problems eating chicken and fish, which I eat a lot of fish now. Chicken sometimes, but red meat very rarely. Red meat's really tough on me. It takes many, many days for me to digest a meal with
mm.
red meat. So I try to shy away from it. But at this specific period when I started doing this, I really just wanted to have vegetables. I wasn't even eating fruits. Um, After the first month, then I started introducing fruits.
We're going to stop here for part one of this interview, but we'll be back with part two next Monday as Senna continues to share her journey and experiences past diagnosis and what she did to go from bedridden to businesswoman. I've dedicated most of my life to fitness and health, but as I've grown older and felt the effects of fatigue as I've battled Crohn's, I no longer want to spend hours in the gym every day, which is how I first stumbled across the Cellar Size Rebounder. It's become the backbone of my fitness routine these days, giving me the ability to tailor my workouts from gentle movement to intense jumping that literally activates every cell in the body. And the best part is, it only takes 10 minutes a day for an incredible workout. Find out for yourself what a difference Cellar Size can make in your health by visiting crohnsfitnessfood.com/cellar size. Thank you for listening to the Crohn's Fitness Food Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have an IBD story, either as a patient or a family member, that you'd like to share as a guest on this podcast, or if you have a topic you'd like to hear about, send me an email at crohnsfitnessfood@gmail.com. If you'd like to learn more about me and my Crohn's journey, follow me on Instagram using @crohnsfitnessfood, or visit my blog for in-depth articles about my struggles and victories with Crohn's through diet, fitness, and lifestyle at www.crohnsfitnessfood.com. And finally, remember, be strong, be grateful, and be the warrior that you are.